So we're technically on holiday. I mean, look, we're probably on a beach somewhere with our feet up, enjoying summer. But we thought we can't leave you with no podcasts. So for the next 2 weeks, we are going to be doing a best of, which is inspired by my early producing days when I used to do JJ, Mike and Dom. They would do this in the weekend, Vix. They'd have they'd choose the best bits from that week and then they'd have a Saturday morning show. And I thought, oh my God, let's do a best bits. So we have basically gone through the whole year and pulled out some of our favorite bits that we thought were worth either replaying, but also if you haven't heard the full episode, maybe you'll want to go and listen to those in the meantime.
It's also a combination of us just wanting a bit of a break and being a bit lazy and being like, you know what?
Oh my God, there was just like so many good bits. We've got to repeat them.
Yeah. But there actually was.
Yeah,
there definitely was.
Going through some of the year and remembering everything that we did this year, I was like, whoa, I can't believe that was even this year. I know that sounds stupid, but I was like, wow, our mindful mini-series that we did with Braveface was in February, and it feels like so much longer ago, but that technically counts as 2023.
That's crazy.
I loved this. This was an awesome... it sounds so arrogant, doesn't it? This was awesome, but I actually did really love it. We interviewed 4 different women, all about their experiences with mental health and finances.
I didn't realize until we started the curve yet how intertwined mental health and financial stresses. It's crazy. And so, talking to these women and their different perspectives and ways of dealing with it was just super, super helpful.
It was also the first time that I had reflected personally on my own money stories, how much I'm affected personally by stress about money. And actually, it had become such a constant in my life that it was just almost normal for me to be stressed about money, which is so sad, but it kind of was the truth. I don't think until I picked apart my own mental health and then my own relationship with money that I realized how much of it is connected. And I know you kind of felt the same, and probably more so now being full-time in the curve and money not being as readily available as it probably has been for a big part of your life and your working career. You start to feel that stress around, can I afford things? Can I not? And then trying to figure out ways of living in the world where you're not so bound by this like constant underlying feeling of worry around money and finances.
And it is the longest relationships we'll ever have is with money. So it's getting it right, dealing with it, making it work for you, making sure it doesn't stress you out and really get you down, and putting things in place, whether it be an emergency fund, for example, or, steps to get out of debt. All those little things can have such an impact on a positive impact on your mental health in terms of if you're getting through that, paying off that debt, having that safety net. And so I think coming out of this, it wasn't just like everyone should do better. It's actually having those practical tips as well. I know people found super, super helpful. And also talking to women that have been in this situation and it's normalized. So many people go through life not wanting to talk about money or being scared to talk about how much debt they're in, or, the fact that they are living paycheck to paycheck and it stresses them out. But I don't know, when you open up the conversation, you realize, oh my God, thank goodness I'm not alone. There's so many other people feeling the same. And I think that can be quite a relief for a lot of people and help with the stress levels as well.
I totally agree. And I think what you said before about the practical tips and things that really helped, we'll link this in the show notes for the podcast. So if you go into the description, we'll link it in there. But we created with Braveface a kind of downloadable resource, kind of an ebook, I guess. And it does have practical tips and tricks on how to get through your own mental health and your finances, because I think it's what you said about putting steps in place is such an important piece to it, because even if you haven't got everything sorted, if you know that you've done the work to at least have a plan and be implementing the plan, you're on your way to being in a better situation than you are. And even that, the amount that lightens the load on your mental health is huge.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was like starting to build my emergency fund back up, I wasn't there. And yes, there's a bit of anxiety around, oh shit, like my emergency fund was like looking a little bit dire. But knowing that I was contributing money each month, and the same with my KiwiSaver, my pension, like retirement 20-year holiday fund. The fact that I know I have an automatic payment set up. Yes, I'm still quite stressed about the future of my finances, but I also know I've put some barriers and nets in place that, like, if I fall, I'm not going to fall on the ground. It's not necessarily about having it all sorted, but it's about having the tools to get it sorted.
Totally. Yeah.
And so this first episode that we wanted to introduce you to, one of our best bits, was Raising the Curve episode 50. It was with Dr. Victoria Thompson. And she is the resident psychologist who works with Braveface. And she essentially just talks about how your mental health and your finances are so massively intertwined. And it was just a chance to understand your own psychology and your own spending and your own ways of being when it comes to, like, your mental health and your money. And if you haven't listened to the full episode, definitely do so. It was Raising the Curve 50.
What you might be saying as well is, how do I differentiate anxiety that I have about a bill that's coming up versus whether I have some underlying anxiety difficulty? And I suppose that one can be hard to tell, but what you would try and look for is, does your anxiety resolve with the resolving of the financial issue? Like when you pay the bill, does it go away? Or do you notice that it moves then onto something else and the anxiety doesn't go away? And always looking for the impact that it has on your overall functioning. So how much is this affecting my ability to engage meaningfully in my life? Symptoms of depression include things like no lack of concentration, low motivation, that sort of thing. So if you have those difficulties, then being proactive with your finances, managing money is going to be a lot harder. Of course, mental health conditions can also impact people's ability to work and earn money. So what happens then is your finances start to take a hit. You might end up overspending or not budgeting. And then, of course, that has long-term impacts on your self-esteem. I suppose as well, it's useful to think about your warning signs for when you might be starting to get into a bit of avoidance around your finances. So that might be things like, and I am guilty of this, not looking at your online banking, ignoring your credit card statement, putting stuff on the credit card that you're like, I'll pay it off, whatever. Like, those are all some warning signs that maybe you're starting to slip into a bit of an avoidance pattern.
Our next guest, the lovely Kayla Gordine, she was the second guest as part of our Braveface mini-series on mental health and financial health. This is Raising the Curve, episode 51. And
wasn't she
she was
both of us
honestly,
just
she walked into the room and you could just feel this
sunshine,
positive energy, sunshine, I want to be your friend kind of energy.
Yeah.
It was really, really great. And she, for such a young person, she seemed very put together, switched on, knew what she wanted out of life. I don't know, it felt like I was talking to a very wise soul. But yeah, it was a great conversation all about not comparing yourself to others and how everyone's on their own journey, got their own experiences, difficulties, shit they have to deal with, and just being a bit compassionate as well, which I found was so, so true.
And what I loved about this conversation was, so she grew up in a pretty poor community and didn't have a whole lot, but comparatively to other people, she did. And one of the things she spoke about was the idea of playing it small and how she's really changed her own mindset around money and creating wealth for herself. And I think it's a really nice follow on from Dr. Victoria Thompson and the idea of understanding your own relationship with money and your mental health. So yeah, I think you'll really like the little snippets that we've picked out from this episode. And if you would like to go back and listen to the full thing, it's Raising the Curve, episode 51. But yeah, let's get to Kayla.
That's all I knew. So, and I, honestly, like, I felt like I was privileged, and I definitely was, because I had shoes on my feet and I had clothes on my back. Like, people at school and children at school, some of them didn't have that. So I thought I was very lucky. And yeah, the view on like people with money was kind of like, oh, there was almost like there was an energy behind that to be like, oh, you know, that they're not like us. And so there was a fear around even wanting to show that I had anything better than anyone else. So I kept myself quite small. But I also learned fast to I wanted to make money. So I started taking on doing like paper runs and stuff at like 11 years old. And if I wanted to play any sport, I had to pay for that myself. So I learned quickly to save and to work for what I wanted to do, basically. I think it's okay because I've needed to learn the lessons personally. Like if I had everything set up even like a year ago, I would not have experienced what I have in the last year. And holy shit, I've learned so much in every aspect from the struggle, from the challenges, and from we need, I feel like and fully believe we need to hit these places in our lives and the rock bottoms to make the changes that we need. And it's trusting that.
So all of our social media girls have said to us, well, they've said to me, you've got to stop calling these episodes your favorite because every single one is sounding like your favorite at this point. And it's true. I love so many of them.
Yeah. It's like picking a favorite child. You just can't, but you love them all. And at times you're going to be like, you're my favorite, because they are.
Yeah. So JJ Feeney, Scandal Queenie. Do you remember that when that was her name on The
Yes.
Edge?
Oh my God.
She would do all the scandal for like the morning breakfast show. JJ Feeney, Scandal Queenie.
Good.
Anyway, I used to work on a show, The Breakfast Show. I used to produce it. So we worked together for about just under 3 years. Loved her, obsessed with her, the most generous, kind, beautiful human ever. And also just absolutely hilarious. And do you know what? I think she's probably one of the reasons why I am really open about my life and things that have happened and how I feel on this podcast, because working with her for such a long time, she was the most authentic person I've ever met and so comfortable sharing about her life and her struggles and the things that she loves and the things she's good at and the things she finds hard. And when she said she'd come on our podcast, I kind of didn't know what that would be like or what she would share, because money isn't really something she talks about.
Yeah, no, she was one of our most open guests. Would you say that in terms of just the comfortableness that she felt in terms of talking to us? And it's probably a fact that you knew her, but yeah, the way that she was talking so openly about money and her situation was, for me, was quite a breath of fresh air, I think. And I think for a lot of people, she wasn't trying to conform to any way of, managing her money or having her money sorted or anything like that. And I think the fact that she's got a really cool dynamic with her ex-partner and her current partner and that whole financial situation is super cool, because it's like everyone's different. You don't have to be the same as everyone else. We're all different ages, stages, experiences, amounts. It's like whatever works for you, and that's great. Don't care about being judged by other people. And I think that was just really cool to hear from her.
So for anyone who hasn't listened to that episode and has no idea what we're talking about, she basically splits her finances with her ex-husband of 5 years. So, most people would hear that and be like, what is going on? But actually, I really rate it. I think it's very selfless, isn't it? Because she's like, well, he would do that for me.
Yes, very selfless. And it's so funny because I think if we'd had this conversation with a male and they were like, I split my finances with my ex-wife still, there wouldn't have been as much of a reaction. Whereas the fact that it's a female doing it for a male ex-partner, there's all of a sudden it's like, what? And it's like, you know what? It works for them. Let them do it.
No, I think that's been a learning for the whole year, honestly, has been don't judge other people's situations because they're different to yours. Learn from everyone.
Totally.
Understand why they do it differently.
Yeah, and not just with money, with everything in life. Just because they don't act like you, look like you do what you do, doesn't mean it's right or wrong.
Yeah, she's amazing. She in this podcast, she talked about what she earns. She talked about negotiating pay rises. She talks about her situation growing up and not having a lot, and how she now supports her mum. And there was so many amazing parts of this interview. And I think if you haven't listened to it, honestly, I would say it would be up there with one of the must listens for anyone.
She's such a good energy.
Yeah, she is hilarious.
I was just sitting there laughing, and I kept thinking I was on the radio. Lol.
Yeah, she's awesome. But that's Raising the Curve, episode 53, for anyone that wants to go listen. And it's just on JJ Feeney on money and mental health. But we're going to play a few snippets for you now. So enjoy. JJ would come in on radio day, on results day, with an envelope of money, and it would have been like $2,500 in cash, and he would give it to me, and then he'd give it to our audio producer and just say, "We know you paid like shit. We really appreciate you. Like here's like a top up." Like it actually kind of makes me feel emotional to think about it, because that was the reason that I knew I was valued.
Every day we sort of like bossing you around and, telling you what to do, and we get mad sometimes and whatever, and you might think, oh, this job sucks, it's thankless, but that was our way of showing you that we actually bloody appreciate everything you do and we couldn't do without you. So if the company can't do it, we were going to do it. The only other reasons when money makes me depressed is because of other people. When my sister decided not to talk to me anymore and it's over money, or, I've had a few problems with when I have my nephew stealing money and things like that. It's mainly about the way other people behave around the money that has caused me stress. There's 3 things in your life. There's work, family, and love, right? And if one of those things isn't going well, then, okay, it's a bit shit. But if 2 of them aren't, then that's the reason when you're going to start breaking down. So you need to be happy in love, happy at work, happy with your family, and you're a happy person. What more could go wrong, But when one of those breaks down, you start to think, oh, my relationship's breaking up. I'm a bit sad. But then you lose your job. I'm fucked.
And so this was the last guest as part of our Mindful mini-series with Braveface. And gosh, we went out with a bang with the last guest, didn't we?
I love Te Kahukura. She is such a queen. She's got so much kindness and like fun, playful, youthful energy in her heart. But she is so knowledgeable and so just inspiring in all of the ways. And I think for both of us, this conversation, it was all about colonization and how there's so much racism still in New Zealand and all over the world, but particularly how Māori have suffered financially from colonization. And it was one of those conversations where Vic and I often, and this doesn't happen very often, we just sat there and kind of stopped talking, didn't we? We were like, we've got nothing important to add here. You just take the floor. And she was just so eloquent and funny and taught us to look at New Zealand and its people in such a way. It's not just what you see in front of your eyes. The reason that there is so much inequality financially and a lack of education, the way that it's disadvantaged Māori people is enormous. And I think that if you're from New Zealand, this is a must listen. She is just brilliant.
And I think this really hit home for me was in terms of how much money stems into so many other aspects of your life in terms of, like you said, education, a lack of education, which can have impacts for generations, a lack of adequate health care, which can impact how much you can earn and how much you can work, and just suffering. And it was just like, wow, if you have money and privilege, the differences in your life are just so massive in terms of that scale. I don't know, it was just quite a realization of, wow, okay, money stems back to absolutely everything, and how colonization, even though it was generations ago, can still have so many effects generations later.
Yeah. I think just like understanding the concept of colonizing is taking land from people who had it before. You're taking an incredibly valuable asset away from somebody, which is going to reverberate for generations.
Yes.
And, being in our white privileged bubble, we just didn't, I don't know, I learned about colonization at school. I learned about Māori culture, but was there much of a financial lens to that? Not really. And so, I mean, for what is such a prevalent and important and also super debilitating position to be in society from a financial perspective, how this has all impacted them. For them is at the forefront, but for us, it's so easy to forget the impacts that would have had. So this is an incredibly important episode. We're going to play a few snippets for you now, which I think you'll be like, oh, I cannot wait to listen to the full ep. But also, if you would like to follow Te Kahukura on Instagram, she is the Māori Millionaire, at the Māori Millionaire, and she's hilarious.
So this is Raising the Curve, episode 55.
Māori suffer every bad statistic at rates far worse than any other race in Aotearoa. And so I think that also has really strong ties with money, because when you don't have money, you can't go to the doctors. When you don't have money, you can't focus at school, all these things. And so I think, due to colonisation, we are still suffering impacts today. And I think that money has a really strong tie to that. And if we're able to bolster our Māori economy and, our wealth and things like that, then we will be able to transform these other statistics in our lives, whether it's healthcare, justice, whatever it may be. The impacts of colonisation and racism are so crazy in my life. And even people in my own family, they say things like, oh, Māori don't get treated differently, but it happens so often that it's just accepted, and that people don't even notice things. But
have you had any examples lately that have happened where you're like, wow, I can't believe this is happening still?
Yeah, well, I was at the bank probably, I don't even know, a year ago or something, and I have, all my different sinking funds. It's my nails account, my travel account, all this stuff.
Love this for you. So organised.
And the bank teller's like, oh, I've never seen someone like you have be so organised with your money. And I was like,
no.
Huh?
The old gender pay gap.
I am so sick of talking about this.
I know.
But it's so important, and it's such a fundamental part of why women end up in financial hardship. But I am so sick. I can't wait for the day we wake up and we're like, you know what? There is no gender pay gap. Woohoo.
I don't think we'll be waking up, babes. I think it's past our time.
Yeah, I think our children's children might be waking up to that. Unfortunately, not us. No, but we can do the hard yards, and we can do the hard yards by putting the message out there and telling everyone how important it is. And one lady that definitely is doing the hard yards and trying to close the gender pay gap and open the conversation was the wonderful Jolie Hodson from Spark. She's the Spark CEO. And for those of you who aren't in New Zealand, Spark is the largest telecommunications company here in New Zealand. And the fact that Spark is the only female-led company in terms of a CEO and a chairwoman on the New Zealand Stock Exchange was quite amazing. So we feel very honoured to have been able to have the conversation with Jolie around the gender pay gap and what she's doing at Spark to improve that. And yeah, it was just great to see a woman in such a powerful position actually trying to bring about change, not just getting to the top of her career or, a senior leadership position and, being like, that's it, I've got here. It was like, okay, how can I improve the situation for generations of women to come so that they don't have the barriers that I had? And I think that was really, really interesting conversation.
I really loved this conversation because it wasn't just talking about the things that she's doing either. It's talking about how if we zoom out as a collective, as business owners or not, as people in the education system or not, just how collectively we can all be encouraging women to be more educated, encouraging women into different spaces in society, into jobs that have traditionally been reserved for men. It all starts with the education piece. And I think what I loved about this conversation was, especially in tech, because obviously telecommunications is edging into the tech space, there's such a low representation of women in tech, but that's because a lot of us don't even consider it. And those kinds of conversations start at school, and the representation that she's trying to create within her company is a really brilliant reflection as to how we can all learn from it, but B, try and implement similar processes at our work, whether you're in a position of leadership or not. You can go to your HR and say hey, I don't really like XYZ, or hey, can we do something about XYZ, or I've got this great idea, or Jolie from Spark does this cool thing. I just think what she did was she really made me feel empowered, and I know that she would make other people, regardless of where they are in their career, whether it's their first job or their last job, the feeling that the workplace is just as much a place for women as it is for men. And the reflection of that is we should then be remunerated and paid equally.
So this is Raising the Curve, episode 56.
What roles are people in? So yes, there's a seniority thing, but there's also a type of career. So if you think about our organisation, I've got over 5,000 people. I've got a mix of people from contact centres, retail stores, really deep technical expertise, data and automation, all of those types of skills. They have quite different salary profiles for those roles, and depending on where people come or what they study at school, etc. So what we see in a lot of the legacy tech and the new tech, a lot of male in higher roles, and with the experience there, we have more women in some of the contact centre, etc. So you get this immediate, not different pay for same role, but if you look at our overall organisation, we have more men in these roles and more women in these roles. And then when you add that, do the median of that, that gives you the difference.
That's so interesting, because I always thought that it was more people in the same role are just getting kind of shafted.
We also then needed to look at, if we want to see more women in some of the tech roles, for example, how are we encouraging the pipeline?
It's so good to hear such a holistic explanation, because I think it makes me personally more mad without that contextual understanding that it's actually probably starting from an education standpoint. It's way back to representation in different industries so that more women learn and grow and then enter the workforce, into those higher paying roles. It's not as simple as, because of your genitalia, we're actually going to pay you less than the person next to you. You know, it's actually not that simple.
And the reality is, for me, it's most important we're moving and we're taking the action to make the shifts. And I said it's a combination both of bringing people in, making sure talent is coming through the organisation where it should, opening up positions and really thinking about what is the right next experience for this individual to put them in the best place.
So family and money has been an interesting conversation that has come up a lot throughout this year. And I think it's because we've spoken to young mums, we've spoken to older mums, we've spoken to mums-to-be, we've spoken to people who want to have kids one day. And this whole idea of, can you have it all? Can you have the career? Can you have a beautiful relationship? Can you have kids? Can you balance money and family life and relationships? Is such a complex conversation, and one that I don't think I had really thought about a whole lot until this year.
I thought I had a way of how I was going to run my family and how I was going to balance a career and being a mum. And then it's so funny, the more people and guests that I get on and hear their situations, and because I'm not in that situation yet, hearing the realities of it and the things that they've had to deal with or change or accept has made me kind of, I guess, second guess.
Hold on a hot minute. Is that what it's like when you're...
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe I can't do that and that. And maybe I need to reassess that, or maybe I do need to think about that. And it was just... I'm so glad I had this conversation before I had children. Had children, like I've had them. I don't have them. But yes.
I'm like, are you pregnant? What's going on?
Yeah. No, I know. Like, why am I getting weird? No, I'm not pregnant.
You are not allowed to have kids yet.
But I've done all the research, babe, and I know what to do.
No, but you know what? So this particular conversation that we are about to play a little snippet of. So Amy Fraser, it was all about balancing family, career, especially when life does not go according to plan. And this was the first time I'd heard her, or I was about to say heard her, but heard anyone talk about the invisible load. And what she was referring to was the idea that women generally at home do more of the cooking, more of the cleaning, more of the, looking after kids, etc. And it's just kind of this given and this thing that kind of flies under the radar. And I think quantifying those efforts financially had never been something I'd even thought about, let alone the idea of it being really disproportionate in terms of what each partner contributes. And I think, that conversation I found super fascinating, coupled with the idea of sticking to your guns on when do you feel powerful? Like, do you feel powerful at work? Because if you do, even if it doesn't make financial sense for you to be working because majority of your money, if not all of it, is going to childcare, but it makes you feel really proud and like you're doing something and like a powerful force to be reckoned with, then don't give up on that just because you have kids. Yeah. If it doesn't make sense financially, it's really thinking about the kind of life you want to build, not just how the numbers add up, but also how you feel in those moments and how you're going to, look at your life and be proud of the things that you've done.
And I think it was also about communication with your partner as well. I think one takeaway from this was all around communicating. Okay, well, what do you want to do? Also, what brings you the most joy in terms of raising the children? Is it reading them bedtime stories? Is it feeding them? Is it going to their daycare and picking them up from daycare? Because if there's things that you communicate that you enjoy and that you don't, and then you can have that conversation about, okay, well, what can you do and what can I do, so that you're both feeling like you're contributing and feeling valued and enjoying it without being negative, if that makes sense.
And I mean, Amy's story is a really powerful one in that her entry into motherhood was not a smooth one. So she essentially found out that her partner was cheating while she was pregnant. So she entered motherhood as a single mother, and she's an amazing mother to 2 wonderful kids. But she's also spent time unpacking what is important to her, not just financially, but from a career perspective, and how you can really dig deep when things get really shit. So if you're looking for some career inspiration, this is a brilliant episode for that.
Yeah. Also she was so eloquent. The words she used sometimes, I was like, I really need to brush up on my vocabulary. She was so well spoken and used such beautiful words to explain things. But yes, this is Raising the Curve, episode 58.
I found out at 5 months pregnant that he had essentially a double life with multiple other women. And so that was after we'd been married for about 8 years. I mean, the one thing that I always offer people in terms, by way of advice in situations like that, is just hold on to the things that make you feel powerful. And for me, that was my work. Well, you have to look at both paying the mortgage and raising children as something that you both reap the reward from, and you both put into those things respectively throughout a relationship. And say one partner takes less time or spends less time at work, or them spending less time at work as a byproduct of them investing their time and energy in the children, both of the parents get to have return on investment from the kids. You could say, well, then the division of property, the one partner hasn't contributed as much financially to the property by way of money, but they've invested in the family in a different way. So it goes back to, and both of you enjoy the roof over your head, but both of you enjoy fed, safe, healthy children.
That's a really good way of looking
I love
at it.
that.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it as a return on investment that you both reap the rewards of, whether that's, a gain from when you sell the house. You also have, the return on investment from the kids.
The kids are like little assets running around.
Yeah, they're like little assets. So, you've got to look at the family as an asset.
Pay rises. Gosh, this is something I wish I knew years and years ago so I could ask Soph for a pay rise.
I was just about to say, I need to ask Vic for a pay rise.
Never gets old. No, it was just, it's such a frightening conversation or confronting conversation to have with your boss. And so many people get scared when it comes to having those pay rise discussions, or they don't know their value or their worth. And so they just avoid having those conversations. But they're so, so important and can actually have such a huge impact on your wealth trajectory. And so we had an amazing conversation with the fabulous Maggie Palmer, all the way from New York. She is a pay rise negotiating expert, and she gave us so many great tips and tricks. And I think this was one of the most useful in terms of resources and practical tips that she gave us in terms of putting them into action. Well, definitely for me it was. And so it was all around how to get a pay rise, how to be prepared going into those discussions. I also spoke about how I found out that I was getting paid nearly 40% less than my male colleagues, which was quite frightening. And I never really thought that I would be one of those people that got paid less, because I just always thought that I fought for what I was worth. But I obviously didn't fight enough, and actually knowing your worth is probably the most tricky part. So yeah, it was a really, really good conversation. And again, such an eloquently spoken lady, and she does this for a living, so she knows all the answers.
Yeah, I loved this one. Maggie Palmer is the absolute go-to if it comes to trying to get a pay rise. If you're wanting to learn anything to do with how you walk into that room and ask for more money, this is the episode to listen to. And we actually have also done a code resource with her, which you can find on the freebie section of our website, and download and just get all of the top things that you need to know so that you can hopefully get more money. And actually we had quite a few people message us saying like, holy shit, this episode, but also like that resource was so helpful. I'm now on 40K more than I was. Like really, really cool success stories. So
and I think the frustrating thing with women in particular is that we always get told how to cut back on spending and where to save money and all of this, and we aren't privy to, or we haven't felt like we're the ones that should be having these conversations about, okay, but how do we earn more? Like there's two sides of the equation when it comes to you as a person. There's your income and your expenses. And if you can increase your income, then you don't have to cut back as much on your expenses. / you can only cut back so much on your spending before you can't cut back anymore. So being able to improve that top line or that income or that revenue that you're generating can be so helpful, particularly in this current environment where everything is so much more expensive. So yes, give it a listen. I'm sure you will come away with at least 1 or 2 super helpful tips and tricks about getting a pay rise. So this is Raising the Curve, episode 60 with Maggie Palmer.
People listening today can start the change by talking about their salary, by encouraging their nieces to negotiate that first salary, by supporting others in their workplace, by calling out BS behavior at work. We all have a role to play.
And I've had a similar situation to you where I found out I was getting paid 40% less than my male colleagues. The HR had actually accidentally printed the bonuses.
Yes, I love it when that happens.
Yeah. And there was like the salary, you obviously get paid a bonus according to your salary. And so there was the salaries on there. And then I went into the salary negotiation just with more confidence because I knew that what I was asking, like I was like, there just can't be a no. Anyway, they said no. They said come back in 6 months' time. And I was like, oh. What? And then I went back to my desk and I was sitting there and I was like, oh, maybe I don't work as hard as John, and maybe I am a little bit less experienced, and
you think there's something wrong with you, but it's a system, it's a systemic problem, but the numbers make you think, well, it must be me. Maybe John does work harder, maybe John is better. No. Typically what I recommend is I would, exactly what you did, Victoria. So I'd be like, hey, Suzanne, I just wanted to talk about my compensation. As you know, here's what I've achieved, A, B, and C. As you know, I'm a superstar because of X, Y, and Z. Love to talk to you about my compensation, and also just want to level set and ensure that my comp is commensurate with everyone else at my level. It's kind of a way of saying, hey, F you, pay me, and don't even think about not keeping me at the same level as all of the fellas, without saying there's a gender pay gap, you're the worst, I'm going to go legal on you if you don't pay me enough.
So that was...
I can't even remember how many top bits we chose, but there was lots of good bits.
We've got so many good bits.
Bits is kind of a funny word, isn't it?
We have so many cool bits.
No, but bits just sounds like, so my grandma, whenever she's like, this is actually kind of gross, but when she travels, she's like, make sure you wash your tits, your bits, and your pits, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever we say bits, I'm like, no, I don't know if that sits very well with me, but I think this is fun. I like going through the archives, and next week we're going to do the same thing. So we'll have a big bunch of things that we think if you've missed it, you should go back and listen to, but also if you don't listen to them, they're just some nice little nuggets to remind you of things that are helpful when it comes to your money and investing. Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking to your friends about your salaries.
And if you liked what you heard, we would love it if you could hit the subscribe button, please.
Yes,
or
please.
Better yet, leave a review. It only takes 5 seconds and it would really make our week, our year, our month.
Okay, lots of love. See you soon.
Bye.